think after 5 years, I hadn't encountered any real hurdles by that point. I remember I got to 5 years and I was like, oh, this isn't that hard. What's everyone talking about? And then I think year 6 came and there was just like one after the other sort of just challenges and things that I wasn't really expecting. And
Yeah.
honestly, now when something happens, I'm just like, oh, well, it's just another
Yeah.
learning curve. And it is what it's one of the, the cons, I suppose, of having a business or, the challenges of having a business. But I think there's so many other positives that come with it that I wouldn't change it for anything.
100%.
And as like bad as this is, part of me just like really loves solving problems. So even when something bad happens, I'm like, right, how can I fix this?
Welcome to Behind the Design, a podcast where we unfold the details behind the designs we know and love and explore how each project comes to life. I am Camilla Ingle, owner of Unfolded, an interior design and styling studio. In this podcast series, we dive into the details with our industry experts, covering topics such as the creative process, latest design trends, and how we, as an industry, work together to meet the brief and overcome challenges. Let the conversation begin.
Natalie, so good to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me about Pony Design Co., commercial interior design.
Yes, correct. So Pony Design, started 10 years ago, had our 10th birthday. It's December just passed. Specialise in hospitality retail, commercial design. Pretty much everything but residential, to be honest, at the moment. Very small studio. I intend to keep it that way because I love designing and I don't ever want to get too big where I'm not able to be on every part of the project.
100%.
Yeah.
And so when you say, hospitality, commercial, etc.,
Yep.
or retail, I should add in there,
Yeah.
not yet residential.
Yes.
Is that because you might dabble? Or
Look, if the right client came along, I would definitely consider it. But I think the thing that I love most about working in my industries into commercial and hospitality is the real strategy and the brief and sort of having a business objective behind it. Like that's what really gives me passion. And I think without having that really sort of strong strategy and sort of goals to achieve in terms of, meeting demographics and designing for a specific type of person or for a client to have a successful business, I feel like the wheels would just keep spinning and I'm not sure if I would be as passionate about executing something that didn't have as much of a strong goal.
amazing.
Yeah.
You're so, even when we met up the other day, that's one of the first takeaways I had. I was like, she's so sure. Like you just sound in such a beautiful way because it's, even hearing how you mentioned the strategy and the objectives and the goal, like that is so refreshing because in residential, it's a little more blurred.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts. There's a
Yeah.
lot more to think about.
Yeah.
Whereas, I've done 1 or 2 commercial jobs and it's a little bit more straighty 180.
Yeah.
Like streamlined,
Yeah.
fast paced and
Sure.
it's deadline driven,
Sure.
clean budget.
Yeah.
Not a lot of variance.
Wouldn't go that far. I
Okay.
think with commercial projects like workspace projects, probably a lot more like that. With hospitality, always moving parts. Lots of different variables. Budgets do sort of change a lot, and clients do change their mind. But I think it's more that it's designing from the start of a project, I suppose. We work in very many different ways, but one of my favorite project sort of processes when we get engaged at the start of a project before it even becomes a project.
Ideal world.
Exactly. And I would recommend all clients do that. Me too. So we have hospitality consultants who we work with a lot, and we would be engaged with them to essentially come up with a successful business strategy for the client. So that includes
Is that like a plan?
yeah. And not only interiors, but they'll go and do sort of the research on, look at the census and sort of see what demographics are in the area, what's meant to be increasing, new infrastructures are coming into the area that might sort of change the types of clientele that might be coming into this potential venue.
Yeah, who's going to visit?
Yeah, that's it.
Who's going to buy here?
100%, 100%. And they almost go as far as to, well, they do go as far as to actually putting a person's name onto it. So it might be, Kelly, she's 29. She's got a husband who's a tradie.
Or Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah. And it's really designing towards...
They both work in corporate.
Exactly. And designing towards these people. And they'll do sort of all like the financial reviews and data and everything to sort of see what the client actually can afford to spend. And then hand in hand with them, we'll sort of create a concept for a venue that might be a pizza bar because in the area... all the other competitors don't do something like that.
Yeah. Or there's only burgers, Chinese, and Thai.
100%. 100%. So we know that we're designing for Kelly, we're designing a pizza bar, we're designing for someone who might have sort of a high, income that they can sort of spend.
And loves Italian.
Yeah, loves Italian. Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's sort of coming up with a concept, a business strategy, and then we'll almost go as far as putting an indicative name and high level branding together to sell to the client and say, if you want to create a successful hospitality venue, this is what we suggest you do.
Wow.
So that's like my favorite thing to do, because it's sort of you know what you're designing for, and you know what your barometers of a success
Clear.
are. Yeah. Yeah.
You sound so passionate when you talk about
Yeah,
it. It's
I
so
love it.
inspiring.
I love it. And I think the thing about that as well, another thing that why I love about what I do so much is interiors are just such a small part of an interior project. There are so many amazing collaborators that we work with, like the hospitality consultants, branding, kitchen and bar designers. Yeah. Lighting design.
Finishes.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that all of those people are really considered in the first stage of the project to actually be able to execute it properly.
Because it's like, what tasks need to be completed and by who?
100%.
And that's why the project management side is so big. Isn't it? That's one hat I know that I wear every day.
Yeah.
Amongst a few others, but it's not just creative. It's making sure
No.
everyone's like, cool, so you're covering that, you're covering that. How also can we have the best outcome?
Exactly. And how can we work on each other's strengths to make sure the client's getting the best result?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so with the branding side, I'm curious.
Yeah.
I don't think we touched on this the other day. Do you have a graphic designer in-house? Or are you like on Photoshop, Illustrator?
No. So when we do these initial concepts, it would just be very high level. So we'd sort of probably do like a standard sort of like ASIC search and it would be just a conceptual name and then sort of a mood board of sort of the direction.
Got it.
Once that project...
So not logos. Right?
No. Once that project turned into a project, then it would be outsourced to a proper branding agency who we've got amazing people who we can recommend. Sometimes the clients have their own, but I think it's really important that once we're starting the interior concept, a branding consultant is engaged so we can be designing the story and the narrative and that, the emotive side of things, like straight throughout, like from finishes through to social media.
Or like the font can't be something wildly different to the concept of the design direction, because it wouldn't work.
Exactly. And even, when, you've got coasters sitting on tables, if you've got this sort of like really sort of rustic, interior, and then you've got this like hot pink,
leather
coaster. I mean, that could actually be kind of cool. But yeah, you
don't mind the idea.
Mind the idea. But you want to make sure that's all cohesive and that there's not two different stories happening, because I think ultimately when patrons come into a venue, you can tell when you walk in and there's this curated playlist and it smells amazing and it's the tactility and the branding and the font and the customer service are all aligned around this story. Like that's when it's,
And see, that's a perfect example of, I really want to dive into for you and I, but also the listeners, the difference between commercial and residential.
Yeah.
Just so it's really clear. But more so at the same time, the parallels are that sensory experience. So what anyone wants to experience in let's call it a space, not a home or not a home or a restaurant, for example. It's more just any space.
Yeah.
And when you say, candles, lighting, that's something that is parallel
100%.
with all design.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is the end user experience? So someone in their home might want dimmers or, having a moment. What's the lighting called? Sensor lighting.
Yeah.
So they might have dimmers or sensor lighting, and that means that their wall sconces light up when they're coming into the master bedroom at night and everything else is turned off.
Yeah.
That same experience could be in a real public dining area in a restaurant. So someone's having their birthday and they just want ambient light.
Yeah.
So there's so many similarities, but you and I spoke the other day about like commercial grade materials. And I'm like, that's so rare that I would even, other than maybe UV rating and things like that I will specify. But tell me more, like, did you you studied and then you were like, I want to do this, or
Oh, so how I sort of came to be where I am.
bit of background.
Oh, well, a long, long time ago, I grew up on the Central Coast hinterland.
Yeah.
So grew up,
Coasties.
yeah, in the coasties, but I
Yeah.
grew up around in a rural area. So all of my friends lived at least an hour away. So I pretty much just had to amuse myself. So me and my sister would film things, we'd make little videos. But my favorite thing to do was my dad was a builder, and we acquired this land. Well, they acquired this land that had a shed on it, and the intention that he was going to build us a house. So while he was building a house, which obviously takes years when your dad's a builder, we lived in this shed. And this shed, I believe the shed was the reason I became an interior designer, because essentially I could redesign my bedroom every day, and I did. So I would move beds around, I'd move cupboards, I'd hang fabrics from the ceiling, and I had unlimited space basically just to create a room. I had a big roller door that my horse could come in, or pony. So my horse could kind of come into my semi-bedroom and we could like hang out together. And he also sort of had piles of construction sand lying around the property. So I'd do little town planning sessions. So I'd be like, okay, this is where the school's going to be. This is where that's going to be. And me and my sister would build like towns. And without really knowing it, I think it was really just always quite inherent that I was probably going to be in the industry. I mean, without even knowing what it was.
Foreseeing.
Yeah, I wasn't around design. I wasn't really around art or anything like that. But I think it was just quite natural for me.
But it sounds like you're in your creative zone there. And as you say, it's unlimited, which is it's also so beautiful when you look back and you think as children or young teens,
Yeah.
when we are in that space. Like I was
Yeah.
on The Sims,
Yes. Yeah.
being like obsessive.
Yeah.
My mum would be like, all right, bedtime.
I
Like,
think-
what time is it?
I think that program definitely created many interior
my-
designers.
Seriously. But it sounds like you're experimenting with fabrics and materials and playing around with how does that look on the ceiling? And I'm sure you turn the lights on and off. But
100%.
how does that impact the lighting?
Yeah. Without knowing it.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so you've got a small team now.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it's just myself and my 2IC Tori at the moment. Ideal team size would be like 3 to 4.
Yeah.
How
It's such a nice middle.
it
Yeah,
is,
I'm
and
here.
I think it's really one of the things about starting my own business was I've worked in lots of, well, not lots, but obviously quite a few other different companies, and I think the thing for me is being able to pick my team and really choose in life who your people are and work with people who have aligned values, who have aligned visions and goals and ideas of what it sort of means to be a caring person, a passionate person, and
Kindness.
yeah. And I think with a small team, it's really a lot easier to be able to carry those goals and values through. And to be honest, I just don't want to stop designing. I got to a point where I think maybe there was like 7 or 8 of us, including me, probably about 5 years into starting the business. And it was too much. I was taking on projects that I didn't want to take on to try and feed the mouths and keep people employed. And, as a result, I was just managing, I was running around, and it wasn't really beneficial for anyone involved, I don't think.
And it's having that self-awareness and that insight of going, this might be something that you think you should do because I'm 5 years in and I'm scaling and
Yeah.
I should have a small team by now and blah, 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 all the should has.
Yep.
But it's like, what if that doesn't work?
Yeah.
For me as a
100%.
person?
Exactly. And
Where's this rule book coming from?
Totally. You're right.
Yeah.
And that's not it's not really a barometer of success for me. Sometimes I see sort of small companies like growing really large and I'm like, oh,
Anxiety
like
rush.
that. Yeah. I think organic growth for me has always been a philosophy. So I started obviously working in like my front room at home, and then shared a space and then got my own space. And I think it's sort of really just growing as you feel that it's necessary.
And not overdoing it.
No. And having a reason to grow as well. Like maybe it's this amazing, a huge project that you land and it's like your dream project to do, like a beautiful boutique hotel or something. That might be cause to be like, okay, I'm going to bring on 2 team members because I really want to give this a go. But I think doing things unnecessarily, sometimes if you lose sight of why you're doing it, it doesn't always end well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's that catch-22 of like, okay, because I was thinking that for this year, a few projects came through and this is before they were signed and sealed.
Yeah.
if they all sign and seal the proposals that have been sent out, where does that leave me with, I'm the same as you, one staff member?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hang on, no, I don't have the resources, but I've just sent them all these fee proposals in anticipation of a yes.
Yep.
And it's tricky.
It
and
is.
so that's why, like, freelance, we're lucky we're in this day and age now where you can just hire a subcontractor, hire a freelancer, get someone online, Upwork.
How do you find that? Because that's one thing I've dabbled in it a little bit, but I've found that it ends up being more back work for me, having to review and communicate. And how have you found that?
It's tricky. I think similar to what you were saying earlier with values and things like that, it's finding the right people for the roles. And I had this chat with an earlier guest about kind of, it's actually better to have a few different subcontractors, let's say, or subcontractors or freelancers or staff in whatever sense to be covering the different tasks, but well.
Yes.
But having them on for less hours.
Yes.
So
Really specific.
really specific.
Yeah.
So when it comes to delegating, I'm not, and you and I spoke about having like an assistant who probably manages the admin and the tasks and, the day-to-days, let's call it. But when it comes to, for me, I've got like my monthly journal that goes out, and then I've got someone who helps my website, and then I've got someone who does my drafting. So I say I've only got a small team, but I've sort of got a few different people that have really built a lot of trust with over time.
Yeah.
And they only work like a couple of days a month on socials.
Yeah.
Or one day a week on drafting, for example. And I'm like, they just stay in their lane. They love what they do. I'm confident with what they're going to do. I'm not, as you say, the questions that can come from, okay, cool, I've given you like 7 different tasks, some of which aren't in your lane, and I've got to follow up with all of those things versus just going, how the plan's going.
Yep, great.
How is the social media going? And it's just sort of one task. So I personally find that better for my brain. But I know a lot of people in our roles who are better at managing stuff so they can have more people who are full-time, covering all different bases and sick leave and all the things. All of that to me is just puts me into overwhelm.
Yeah, right.
And I'm similar to you. I'm hands-on. Now that I've got the podcast as well, I'm working on a few different things, but I still always want to be hands-on. So what does that look like? And you're sort of always pivoting, right?
Always.
Yeah.
There's never a straight way forward. And I think that's one thing after, 10 years in business. I think after 5 years, I'd had a pretty, honestly, I never stopped working, but I hadn't encountered any real hurdles by that point. I remember I got to 5 years and I was like, oh, this isn't that hard. What's everyone talking about? And then I think year 6 came and there was just like one after the other sort of just challenges and things that I wasn't really expecting. And honestly, now when something happens, I'm just like, oh, well, it's just another learning curve. And it is it's one of the, the cons, I suppose, of having a business or, the challenges of having a business. But I think there's so many other positives that come with it that I wouldn't change it for anything.
100%.
And as like bad as this is, part of me just like really loves solving problems. So even when something bad happens, I'm like, right, how can I fix this?
I need more of that from you.
Oh.
When you get a challenge, I'm
it's
like,
probably not helpful. It's probably not very good for my health.
You're like, why do I love this so much?
Seeking out this adrenaline. But look, I thrive on overcoming challenges, and I do pride myself on that. So
very good. And so
it's
what
fun to pass.
inspires you now? Like, do you go to a lot of like I find sometimes if I went and met with Made by Story, which is the timber company, timber floorboards, and even just walking into the showroom, having these conversations about how projects can look and where things can be applied and things like that. I'm like, oh, I forget how much this inspires me to step outside. I'm just going to lay timber floorboards. Yeah. It's like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that veneer on that joinery and things like that. So,
that does inspire me. And to be honest, I think for most of my career, I have been so just focused on working, like get a job, head down. Everything has been all about sort of just focusing on my clients and my projects. I have been terrible about never go to networking events, never go to industry events, never got out. Like it would only be sort of when I was working on a specific project that I needed to look for something, then I would do that. But
that's when you're forced, not just out of curiosity.
Yeah. And it's like the curiosity is always there, but I've got a deadline due. I've got to be on site at, 6 o'clock in the morning. I've got this. It's sort of always been a luxury but it's not a luxury. It is essential, and that's something I've taught myself over the past few years is that that's not a way to keep continuing in. So what I've decided doing over the
It's
past
like it's not sustainable.
it's not
Yeah.
sustainable, and it's not I'm not going to be the best designer by working like that. And I think that's one of the topics about burnout, which I'm sure we'll come to later on. But
Yeah.
I think in terms of staying inspired, one thing I've been employing over the past year or so, which has been intending to do since I started the business, but every Friday, like one Friday of every month, we'll have pony gallop. So we'll do a little like trip around town. So we'll kind of go to like a really cool like restaurant or breakfast place maybe that's opened up that's sort of, been reviewed and has great interiors. And then we'll maybe go to sort of 2 or 3 suppliers. And it's just a really good way of sort of seeing what's out there, staying present on a Friday, just being able to kind of, put the emails off and really focusing on sort of digesting all this new information and inspiration. And even though it's a struggle sometimes when I'm thinking about all the emails I've got to respond to and work I've got to do, at the end of those days, I feel so nourished.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring.
It's very
You've got to get inspired because especially as like I was just having this chat with Craig from Artisan Exterior, being able to be in the role as the owner of leading the pack
yeah.
in innovation, in the pack meaning, your team, my team, because they're going to get bogged down
Mhm.
the same way we get bogged down. Who's out there going, all right, this is new.
Yeah.
Let's see if this can be applied.
Exactly.
Like I would have never thought, but
Yeah.
I just spoke to my supplier and apparently it can be.
That's it.
You and I are kind of inspiring our team as well, which is another hat to wear.
And our
but-
clients.
And our clients.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I think not even only just inspiration, but that's really just staying current. And that's one thing
And just across.
100%.
Yeah.
You need to be. Our industry is constantly evolving. Finishes are changing all the time. Technology is changing. And
Yes.
we need to be up to date with that to be the best at what we do. And to be
Building standards.
building
Got
standards.
to make sure.
And giving our clients the best as well. And I think, our career, the beautiful thing about being an interior designer is we could be doing this when we're 100. If we stay on top of what we need to be staying on top of, I think you're only going to get better. Like, that's the beautiful thing about this is like we're only going to become better designers, better leaders.
More experience.
Yeah, more experience as long as we stay on top of what's changing, what's evolving and be able to grow with that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember when we first caught up the other week and I just thought, I forget because I'm so heavily in the residential space and I've only done a couple of different commercial jobs and we definitely can do them.
Yeah.
But I forget what goes into them, and that's what I was going to bounce with you today because it's like what I have as standards for residential, you've got to be across that same thing in the commercial hospitality retail space.
Yeah.
And do you how do you manage all of that? Do you feel like you've got to, do you end up having those conversations with the clients? Hey, this particular bench seat's going to be in a certain grade, leather, et cetera? Or do you just kind of like bypass all that and just go, I've got this, here are the samples that are suitable. Let's go from there.
Look, we're very lucky. Well, maybe not lucky because this is sort of the clients that I seek out, but I love my clients. I'm so grateful for them. And typically my clients are quite well educated in the hospitality industry. And if they're not, they're engaging us and a bunch of other professionals to just tell them what needs to be done.
Yes.
So,
and make it look good at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And functional.
Exactly. And look, most of my clients are repeat clients, are word of mouth. So we've developed that trust now. But what we would do, so we've got a brief for a project, we would just select what we think and that meets the current standards. I mean, a big thing obviously would be the whole sort of like silica industry changing.
Yeah.
We were kind of ahead of that and a little bit before, but not deliberately because we have to choose. We design a lot of sort of kitchen passes and there's not many products that are completely heat resistant that can have sort of flames and everything on them. So we'd kind of got onto sort of the porcelain.
Flames on.
Like if you're doing sort of like hot, like barbecues,
like
grills.
teppanyaki kind of energy.
Yeah, and even just like hot plates, like pizza pans,
Oh,
like straight from the oven onto a surface. Even I've done sort of like open fireplaces, and there's not many materials that actually can survive that. And so we've been kind of proposing sort of porcelain for a while now because of that.
The heat resistance.
Yeah, and then
Durability.
Exactly. And then, obviously there's always like builders that will try and value engineer things and be like, what about a Caesar stone or, maybe you can't mention that, a manufactured stone. And it's then we'd speak up. Or if someone suggests something, we'd be like, well, we can look at that, but it's not going to be as hard wearing. You're going to have to seal this. You're going to, So I think we'll always propose what we think first. If a client ever sort of has any input or wants changes, of course, we will always, take that on board, but obviously educating them at the same time as to sort of current standards and lessons that we've learned because, we've had projects where, okay, if that didn't work so well, let's not do that again next time, like timber tabletops, amazing. Some clients don't like them just because of, sometimes the finishes kind of get a little bit tacky or something over time and they do require maintenance. But timber tabletops are beautiful. So do you want to have that beautiful tactility and seal it, once a year or something? Or do you want to sort of have a laminate finish? So
I was about to say, or like a vinyl, like vinyl wrap or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it's like, it just comes back around to, again, the parallels with residential and commercial
100%.
on projects.
Yeah.
Educating clients.
That's it.
Even educating the builder sometimes, because that's one thing I think is a bit of a preconception of like, oh, everybody knows every product and everybody knows that it's all going to work. And it's like, well, no, I might need to talk to the builder about something
100%.
that I haven't used before.
Yeah.
Or the architect. And they might say, oh, I actually found that really hard wearing, or I didn't find that.
Yeah.
Never use it again.
That's
great. I'm
That's
so glad we
it.
had this conversation.
That's it. It's all teamwork. And I think you really do have to respect, like for me, being on site, like at an early age, obviously I knew how to do that. But being on site is something that designers should be exposed to as a junior. Unfortunately, they're not. But you learn so much from the trades that you work with. And there's nothing worse than the reputation that designers get, because there are a lot of them, that are prissy designers that are like, this is how I want it to look, make it happen, instead of really understanding how it works and being quite ignorant to the process that goes along with it. And, we've got some amazing joiners that we work with, because they're the ones constructing this. And they might sort of say, look, there's a better way of achieving this detail. We've used this product that's better than that, blah, blah, blah. They're the collaborations that we want to have. And from the client's best interest, it's really good to have those early on in the stage.
Yes.
So that you've got a budget to meet. You could be value engineering as you're designing, instead of documenting, tendering, getting everyone to do these sort of really high detail.
Jumping ahead.
Yeah. And then you're like, okay, we'll have to rip 100K out, when you could have been doing that through collaboration.
Totally.
At the start.
Totally. And what do you do all scheduling yourself?
Yeah, we do everything.
Yeah. Do you do that with Programmer?
We just started using Programmer.
Yeah. Savvy.
Yeah. Love it.
Super savvy.
Yeah.
It's I think that's really saved a lot of people in terms of documentation. And
Definitely.
because so much you've got to document.
Yeah.
And just even like the notes column.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
'Cause I've got a lot of notes.
Yes. Like there's a lot of,
We like to let you guys know.
we do a lot of custom stuff. So I found that a little bit trickier on Programmer, but we're figuring out a way, and I'm sure they'll update things as time goes on. So if you're listening, Programmer.
Yeah. If you're listening, my little, what is it? Bit of feedback.
Feedback. Yeah.
So-
But Programmer's been great.
Yeah, it's good. And so projects to date, like, are you mainly around Sydney, or where are you?
Yes, no. We do a lot of work in Canberra as well, and in rural kind of like areas as well. So haven't yet done anything in Melbourne. But I think I've done some in Queensland.
Do Melbourne?
Yeah. If it came across, I mean, look,
Open to it.
But I mean, look, there's so many amazing designers everywhere. I think for me, it's as much for the client as it is for myself. It's like, are we the right people for you? Because there are so many brilliant designers out there, and lots of amazing small businesses that have started since COVID. So I think clients are really lucky that there's actually a really plethora of amazing small design firms now that have really, experienced people.
Yeah.
Love to I'll do a job anywhere for the right project. Yeah, I love getting out of the office, and that's another inspiring thing as well. Getting out of your day to day,
Totally.
getting on the road and just seeing different, even like small country towns, and I think it's really beautiful just to be able to experience different places, because everywhere and everyone does things so differently.
Totally.
Yeah,
And that's why, like we say around being the owner, but the driver is because the way you do things is different to me and other designers. And that's why it's having that, like you say, client fit, but also I'm the right fit for them. They're the right fit for me.
100%.
And you get to that point in your career that you're like, that's really important.
It is.
Whereas when you're younger, you're like, oh, a new job, of course.
100%.
And now it's like, okay, let's have a really good chat about your expectations, where you're at. Yeah. I think obviously budget and everything else. But
I think it's like any relationship, there has to be cohesion, there has to be a connection there. And I've got an amazing hospitality client who I've been working with for the past few years, and he came to me and he was doing his house. And he's like, "No, I need to do my house." And I couldn't do it because of conflict of interest. And he's like, "I want someone who can you recommend, that's going to get me." And I'll put my thinking cap on. I was like, "Right, I've got it." And I recommended someone to him that I knew was going to like push him and challenge him, or be able to have fun with him. And he's been so happy with her. And that made me like really, I don't know, really pleased to hear that, I just think through matching people with the right personalities and people that sort of think very similarly, you can just have a beautiful, trusting, professional relationship. But it can be quite intimate sometimes, especially if you're designing someone's house. It's way more intimate than commercial.
Yes.
But I think that's really, really important. And it's across project teams as well.
100%.
You want to have people that have the same values and respect, and you're a team.
Yeah.
Like, we're all a team, and people forget that.
And even more simply put, it's like, how do you see things?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important with a bit of a recent project up on the coast, where the architectural team, there's 3 men, and then there's the husband and wife, and as clients, and they were obviously over the moon with the product that or the plans, I should say, that the architectural team had put forward. However, the wife felt a little bit masculine in that environment. She was sort of like, "Oh, I'd really love to have a bit more feminine energy here." And she didn't realize it until, they're quite far into the project. So they engaged with me.
Yeah.
And said, "Hey, this is a really interesting conversation to be having, but what are your thoughts?" And I thought, well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd probably feel the same.
Yeah.
If it was a bit of out of my wheelhouse, and I, wanted to just have that more balanced energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily a sexist thing by
No.
any means. It's genuinely, how can I have a balance of feminine and masculine input into this project that's my forever home,
For sure.
that I might be spending millions of dollars on. And I'm like, she's got a good point.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like the transparency.
Definitely.
Because up front, I know that everything that I put forward that might be a bit more on the feminine side might be way more appreciated than maybe what I would have thought with another client, for example.
And you probably know different types of questions to us. And I think that's one of the skills of being a designer. You have to be curious. You have to be nosy sometimes. Like, you have to know how things work, exactly what you want. And sometimes I find with clients is that the biggest challenge is they don't know what they want at all. And so you're just probing, asking questions to generate their thought process that can ultimately result in something. And I think, sometimes bringing on a different team member that might sort of have a different way of approaching things, or
different communication.
Yeah, different communication styles.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can be, really critical to a project's execution.
Totally. So in 10 years, have you experienced burnout?
Oh yeah,
A few times.
Queen of burnout. Definitely. I think probably without knowing it for the first few years, because it was just adrenaline and it was passion, and it was definitely stress, but I don't think it was negative stress. But there was just
too much pressure.
It was more like excitement. I mean, I just never stopped thinking about it. I would just not sleep. I'd get up at, like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd go into work, and it was just that adrenaline. I loved what I did so much, but, physically your body's not going to be able to
It won't keep up
with so much. So it's definitely been a process of really learning to listen to my body when it's had enough. And
do you do that now?
Yeah, 100%. I think the past few years I had some really big life changes happen, and I did get to a point where my body basically just stopped and was like, this isn't happening anymore. There was just, being someone who I've never really been sick very often, I've got a really good immune system, and it was just like countless things after the other, like all these stomach issues with my skin, and the second that I kind of just stopped and just like reassessed everything, changed instantly. So now it's just really tapping in when I can feel when things are too much and drawing a line at it. And look, that's not to say like I won't push myself past the point sometimes when I need to or when I want to, but you have to be realistic, is that your body physically is only capable of so much. Yeah. And, I want to give the best to my team and I want to give the best to my clients. And, if that means taking a Friday off and being able just to go and see beautiful spaces and actually immerse myself in, creatively nourishing places and then come back on Monday like full steam ahead, that's what you got to do. And I think it's the same thing with staff. I'm really a big advocate for healthy work environments. I had some very bad experiences coming into the industry, and our industry is notorious for bad treatment of designers. I mean, the salaries versus the amount of hours that they work and the expectations of
Overworking.
is pretty disgusting, if I'm completely honest. Like, some of the situations I've been in, I'm like, really, really awful, and it's not uncommon. And so I came out of those situations as being like, that's not how it should be. Like, I'm all for hard work. I'm the hardest worker you will meet.
Yeah.
But that does not mean working long hours is not working smart.
No.
And I think if you're working for a company where you're constantly working overtime, that is bad management and that's bad business. And
Because it shouldn't be.
it shouldn't.
An expectation.
100%. And, our industry is like, it swings and roundabouts. It's really quiet at the moment. When it's quiet, you take that time to reassess. When it's busy,
Have that sleep in.
exactly, leave early on a Friday.
Enjoy the Friday.
100%.
Don't be worried about the tasks when you get home.
Exactly. And then there's going to be times where, we have to, like, it's 100 miles an hour and you got to be prepared for those times. I just think there really needs to be a lot more awareness in this industry and it needs to be spoken about more because it is pretty bad.
And good on you for sharing that because I think, this is a perfect platform for us to have these conversations because as much as it's behind the beautiful designs as a concept, it's also what are we doing to achieve this? And like you say, it's kind of like looking at any industry that works way too hard.
Yeah.
But on paper looks great.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, hang on. Surely there's more balance that we can achieve here.
And it's not even like working hard is not even a flex. Like it's just
because like the girl boss era, it's like hustle. It's like fortunately that's like nearly over.
Yeah.
But I was like, am I meant to be hustling harder?
Yeah.
Than I'm already hustling?
Yeah.
Like also enter masculinity.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think that there's that
more
sort of that toxic culture of sort of being seen to work hard and working hard for the sake of it. But
Still
that's
at
not
work.
that's not the same as performing well.
Worked all weekend.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, Monday you're going to be wrecked.
Yeah.
For your client meetings.
I bet you're not a very good, you don't perform very well.
Or are you scrolling?
Yeah. Are you making mistakes on your schedules? Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, there's so much to dive into with this type of thing. And I think I went through, burnout not long ago. And it also made me realize that I was like a zombie. And I look back on it and you just kind of go like, your body will tell you.
Yeah.
Your body will say it subtly.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you don't listen,
Yeah.
it'll go a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, I would get pain all throughout my body.
Yeah.
Like just random injuries from not really having done a lot.
Yeah.
Like I run and Pilates and whatever, but I'm not doing strenuous CrossFit or anything, heavy like that.
Yeah.
But my body would just start to react. And then I would feel like I'd had like 4 hours sleep and I'd actually slept a full night, but it's because my brain was so
Well, that's it.
busy.
That burns so much energy.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and so my goal this year off the back of that was to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
So everything I go to jump into with excitement, like you say, we're excitable people.
Yes.
We're creatives. We're designers. Of course, we're excited when a new job just signs off and you yet to even start the concept. You're like, all the
Can't stop thinking about it.
I need to bounce this with my team and bounce to the client. Like there's so much excitement, but it's like, pause. You're excited.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No dramas.
Yeah.
However, can these thoughts, write them down.
Yes.
Write
Can
it
you
all
think
out.
about them on Monday?
You can think about it on Monday. Give yourself a breather because then on Monday, you've given maybe your subconscious or your unconscious, I'm not sure the exact wording, but time to just process as well. And that's actually beneficial for a creative.
Definitely.
Because we need that downtime.
That's it.
And if we don't have that, Monday will be hard. And Tuesday will probably be even harder because your workload's back on.
Sure.
So it's like, as you say, kind of listening to your body, but owning when it happens.
You've got to be irresponsible for it. And I think someone
Self-aware.
said to me once that I carry really strongly because some projects I do, if I think about them on the weekend, it's okay because it's fun, but it's like choose where you spend your heartbeats.
Yes.
You only get a certain number of
you
heart.
spend your
I know. I love that.
Oh, Because you goosebumps.
You only get a number of heartbeats in your life.
Yeah.
And, when I've laid in bed, stressing about something, or, there's been some, person on a project I'm working with that's just a real not a nice person.
Yeah.
Lie in bed.
Causing drama.
The thing that's always stopped me is like, no, they're not. You're investing now your time, your breath, and your
energy.
heartbeat on this awful situation, and then choose where you want to invest it.
Be
For me,
selective.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I think it's like also the biggest thing I've learned is like you say, before you get to that worst part, that's when you've got to just step back and go, okay, this could happen again. I could allow this, but no. And even for me to delegate, that's a perfect opportunity. Okay, cool. You're working at 140%. What is that 40 that could be delegated? Yes, it will cost you. Yes, it means, financially you got to assess things or whatever it might be.
Sure.
But does that then mean that you'll bring more projects in at a later date? Like you've got to be always forward thinking.
100%. And I think people respect it. I've obviously had that hard situation. So being a small team, it doesn't take much for us to be too busy.
No.
And
it can happen like that.
That's it. And, I've had clients when clients come to me and they're like, oh, we've got this project on. And, I'll be like, I'm so sorry. I would love to.
Can you start tomorrow?
Yeah. That's it.
Oh, yeah, I've got nothing else on. Let's go.
100%. And, I don't say that, because I can't. And I can't deliver you the level of service that you rightly should be getting from me and my business.
And your standards.
Can't give that to you. Can you wait a month? If not, that's totally fine. Here are some other designers who do similar things. Maybe get in contact with them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll be waiting, but I just can't hand on heart say that you're going to get the same level of experience. Service that you expect from me.
And do you think historically
Yeah.
that people appreciate that and wait?
I have been told that they really respect that. Yeah, they do. And as much as it might annoy them at the time. Because
It's outside their timeline.
Exactly.
Everyone's tomorrow.
That's it. But if you want, I don't go into things half-hearted, and I take on projects very selectively. I've learnt lessons from the past, and I don't do things now by halves. If I can't give my 100% to it, like if I can't vouch that I will personally be working on that project hands-on and at meetings all the time, there is no way I would even consider taking it on.
No. Well, it's kind of like, it sounds heavy, but it's like disrespectful to yourself because you're like, I'm not going to be the best version of myself for this project. Are you going to resent it later anyway?
Yeah, that's
you'll be
it.
like, I'm not doing what I should be doing for that project. I shouldn't have taken it on. Like, you don't want to go down that path.
No, and there aren't excuses either.
Clients don't deserve that.
No, clients don't deserve it, and you can't. There's no excuses. Like if I take on a project, and there's no possible way that I would ever, not meet deadlines or anything like that. So you're setting yourself up into a situation where burnout's inevitable, and it's going to create a pretty unsatisfying experience probably for most parties involved if you go ahead with something you just know intuitively that's probably not the right time.
Intuitively.
Yeah,
big
and
word.
I've said no to some dream projects because of that. It's like sometimes I've kicked myself, but I'm just like, it wouldn't have worked.
No.
Yeah.
No, I would have been, what is it, over-promising, under-delivering.
Yep.
And that's like the worst place to be.
It really is.
That's probably going to cause 3 a.m. thoughts.
It is.
And like, I've got too much on my mind.
That's it. You don't want that reputation either.
No.
Like once we really pride ourselves on our clients coming back to us, and, I'm so happy when they go elsewhere and then come back because, they've been so happy with the service that we're provided. And the last thing I ever want to do is have a reputation for not being able to deliver on what we promised. So,
and that's a testament to your, in itself that people are coming back. Like you want repeat referrals,
certainly,
repeat clients.
Yeah. And that's where the best projects happen, when you've got that trust over, like a decade of working together. The things that you can create is amazing because your clients just trust you. You get them. You know what the little things are that they don't like or that they do like.
Or how they operate.
Yeah, how they operate.
As much as, oh gosh, I've read so many things around, I've read so many things around how, especially like memes on Instagram or whatever that just pop up, but around how, have boundaries with clients and tell clients how you operate. But then on the flip side, it's, make sure that the client comes first or the customer comes first and things like that. And so you can read all of this, but it's like, I want to go to bed at night going, I found a really beautiful, gentle middle ground there.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, from the start, this is how I operate.
Yeah.
This is how Unfolded works.
Yeah.
This is what we typically find a successful agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is our process. Then give them an opportunity to say, all right, cool. I have a few queries on this, this, and this. And I find that a beautiful way to do things because you're saying this is a successful sort of initiation. However, I want
First date.
First date. However, I want to hear, you know, how you do things too.
Yeah.
And what's important to you. And like you said earlier, touched on values. As much as it's nice to have business values, even my personal values around communication, like I'm really communicative. If I find that a client isn't able to get back to me, like hardly at all,
Yeah.
I can't do my job. So that's really important again to say, look, it's not that I want to hear from you every day, but if I have pressing questions that the builder's waiting on, the supplier's waiting on, we need to sit and have 20-minute Zoom.
100%.
It doesn't need to be a big deal,
Yeah.
but let's bounce. Let's jump on that early.
I agree. And I think clients need to make themselves available.
Yes.
And, you know, I did a bit of a brand refresh at the end of last year. And so it's very front on my mind.
Very cool.
Oh, thank you.
On your Instagram. Check it out. Yeah.
So that was one of our amazing branding consultants, Shay Robbins.
Yes.
So she's done all our branding in the past as well. But it reminded me when you do take on a project like that was a job for me. I had to make sure that every day I was available to review documents she'd sent through. And it's like that with a client.
Yes.
You can't just engage someone and then not invest time in it because you like the questions that we need to ask you need to be aware of everything. You can't just feign, you know,
so much
ignorance and then
detail.
get on site and not be happy with something because you didn't invest that time. Like it really is really critical that clients are aware of that. Like it is a big project and you just have to be available to like look and think and respond so that you can get the best result.
And they're trusting in us. Like a perfect example I was thinking as you were speaking is like the infill of a sofa.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, density and
feather fill. Are your kids going to be jumping on it?
Yeah.
Do you want to, is it going to be like near an outdoor area? Does it need to be UV fabric? Like whatever it needs to be, that's my role.
Yep.
But you need to be responding to the email that I sent to you saying, here's all the questions because I want to make sure that I get you the right product.
Certainly.
And sometimes I know it can be overwhelming for clients. And sometimes they're like, oh, I've got a lot of emails from you. I've got to go through. And I'm like, I'll try and consolidate better. But, you know, I'm on the front foot.
Exactly. And it's hard sometimes. Like, help me, help you.
Help me, help you. Exactly.
Yeah.
And as much as like they're all beautiful, I'm in a similar boat. I've got beautiful clients. I'm just really aligned.
Yeah.
I would say it's the best word at the moment. I feel so aligned with everything. And, you know, you work hard to get to this point. It's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
But it's a classic case of, okay, I can sense, and that's that psychology and intuition that you spoke about. I can sense that maybe, okay, they haven't got back to me on like 4 of the emails that I've sent that are all really important. And I'll say, do you want to meet on site?
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, oh, you know what? Thank you so much. Like I've had the kids this week and then hubby's away for work. And then this weekend I've got my mum coming up and staying. But what day? I'll get her to my kids and we can just catch up.
You're right. Like completely learning people's communication styles. Like some of my clients, like they will just not read emails, pick up they'll answer the phone the first ring.
Yeah.
And so if I want an answer.
And they're like, oh, so I haven't had a chance to look.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm just going to call you.
Exactly. And it's just learning those different ways. And unfortunately, obviously in our industry, we do have to have everything written down because it's all documentation.
I'm going to now document everything we spoke about.
And it can be very serious. But unfortunately, we do have to do that because like, you know, a phone call just doesn't cut it sometimes in terms of approvals when you're spending, you know, a lot of money on something and, you know. Big decision.
Yeah, big investment.
But you're right. It's figuring out people's communication styles and how they best listen and learn. And I think if you learn that early on with a client, you can tailor your proposal around that as well. So some clients might require a weekly site visit. Some might not want to at all and they just want to chat on the phone or something.
Yeah, 100%.
With your clients being residential, do you get that opportunity before you sort of are engaged for a project to actually have that first date meeting?
Yes, always.
Oh, that's great.
Always.
Yeah.
It's so important. So not only would I try to initiate it in person because I find when you're sitting there with someone, there's so much to learn about them and for them to learn about me. Body language, expression, again, communication, confidence, lack of confidence. Are they a decisive person? Are they not? All that type of thing. And I find that most people with me are more comfortable with me in person.
Right.
Could be an energy thing, I'm not sure. But essentially, yeah, that's ideal.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Zoom.
Yeah.
Because I've also got to take them through, I've got 4 phases in my
Yeah.
proposal. I've got to take them through what each phase looks like, the deliverables, the expectations, the outcomes, why each phase is important because it goes into the next phase. Like, it's a lot to go through. But all of that's so important from the start. And then once they've sat there for, 40 minutes and we've all gone through it, most of the time they're like, oh, okay, cool. Let's proceed.
But it's
Because
great.
they're confident with it now. Because I'm confident with it.
And it's great
You
that
know?
you understand the complexities of it, because I think the one thing that I really find challenging in the way we work is to try and get someone to sit down before, like, to run through a proposal. Impossible.
I know.
Impossible.
I know.
And it's really challenging. And typically I just won't, unless I've worked with the project manager before and I sort of trust them that this client is going to be,
So you have a
is gonna
separate
understand.
project manager on.
It really just, like, we don't do project management, so I will never take on a project that doesn't have a builder engaged as project manager or a separate project manager, because there's just so many trades and like that's just a whole different area of
It is.
expertise.
Yeah.
But if I pretty much would never take on a project where I haven't met the client before. But even then, it's like the detailed. It takes me usually about a day to put a detailed proposal together because I'm so specific with it.
And it's unique every time.
It's unique every
tailored to-
time,
Yeah.
but no one ever reads it, and that's when it gets really tricky sometimes. Is if you're trying to give them a really good value design package, and you've only allowed for like one revision because the budget's tight, and then they're expecting several revisions, and it's never nice to come to that point to be like, you had one revision, we've done 3. If there's any more, we'll just have to look at additional time, and it's never a nice conversation to have, but that could
Because
also
they haven't read that's how it's gonna go.
exactly,
I know.
or I suppose made the time at the start of the project to interview people who they're asking for proposals from, and
Yeah.
I probably think it's a bit of a shame from their perspective as well, because you want to be like a proposal only shows so much. Like if that was me, then it was engaging someone to do this huge design.
Yeah.
I'd want to meet every person that was involved in that process and know that I trust their communication and it doesn't come down to their proposal or their bottom line of their feet.
Yeah. And do you think you're now like that because you appreciate potentially what we do,
Yeah,
whereas
100%.
someone who it's not their wheelhouse,
Yeah.
it's not their understanding,
Yeah.
they'd be like, you got it, yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm thinking, do you know what I've got?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I don't think you do.
No, I don't think you know what have you read it yet?
Yeah.
Like, are we on the same
It's a bit of a process.
Yeah. Literally. But one thing I've learned, I learned this from a PR friend of mine, actually. I don't know if it helps, but, and it's a bit of, for the listeners, for potential clients, it's a really good one because it's like a lot of the time as designers, I feel like you'll agree, we absorb some revisions until we don't.
Yeah.
And that's where obviously contractually we can refer to the contract,
Of
refer to the
course,
contract
of
or
course.
proposal. However, it's a really nice soft way to let people know that, hey, we have absorbed a couple of these revisions to date. I now will need to start charging for, this particular scope of work that's outside of the inclusions, I should say. So yeah, it's just a nice way to kind of go, we're working with you as best we can.
Yeah.
However, we're probably getting a bit beyond now and we will need to charge.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really nice way to, work with them.
Yeah.
Other than just, letting it go too far.
Exactly.
And then they're a bit like, what? And then you're like, oh, well, it's been already 6 revisions that I haven't mentioned. And they're like, what? I didn't realize this.
Yeah. I think when you get the sense that it's not wrapping up anytime soon,
Yes.
that's when it's kind of like, okay.
Or they just keep texting you like 17
Yeah.
links to things and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's a lot.
But it is good that, sometimes it varies. Like most of the time I sort of got the engagement direct with the client. And, because of my relationships now, I can be honest about it. But if I know they're the sort of client that needs a lot of revisions and needs a lot more, a longer process, I will factor that into the fee. So I know straight up, like I'll do everything to be able to dedicate 100% to that project and not have to bring up those discussions.
Yeah.
And that has helped a lot. But you don't know that until you've worked with someone before.
Exactly. Because this is you're saying this is with repeat clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sad.
Yeah. But
Good.
yeah, it's all a learning process.
It
really.
is every day something new. We love what we do.
We do. Well, it is. It's such a beautiful career, I think, in terms of how dynamic it is. And
Yeah.
honestly, if I just can't think of doing anything else.
Me either.
Just how flexible you have to be, and it's constantly challenging, and you're forcing yourself to have to grow. And I mean, this is all new to me. I've never done a podcast or filmed podcast before. So I think there's always opportunities just to be expanding your wheelhouse,
Yeah.
this career. Yeah.
And I was so happy to hear that, it was similar with Craig from Artisan Exterior. He was like, I've never done a podcast. I'm loving that, like, everyone's first
Everyone's giving it a
podcast.
go. We're all getting, out of our comfort zone and growing up.
Grow our industry as well. Like,
Yeah.
just having the platform to chat.
100%.
It's so good. Like, even you and I, we'd never met, and we spoke the other day, and we're just bounce.
It is.
It's like we've all got so much to talk about.
Yep.
And so much to cover.
And it's very unique as well. And unless you work in this industry, you just don't get it.
No.
Like, me and my staff always joke about, like, oh, we're so misunderstood. Designers are so misunderstood. Like, you don't know what you have to go through. And it's not really until you actually chat to another designer that everyone's just like, oh, I get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or when you're constantly agreeing and you're like, oh, you have that too. Because you can get so caught up in your own day to day.
Yeah.
So good. Okay. So before we wrap up with the final question, where can people find you?
So I've only just started really taking over social media.
Yeah.
So you can find me Pony Design Co.
Yeah.
is Instagram handle.
Yeah.
And then ponydesignco.com is our website. So yeah, and then links to, our press and other projects available on those platforms.
Wonderful. And so we always wrap up with a final question.
Mhm.
Bit of a funny one, just for the listeners, something personal. What is your ultimate ick when it comes to interiors?
I've got a lot, but I would have to say the one that's like pretty much like forefront in my mind, because I've just seen so many beautiful interiors ruined by it, is exposed curtain tracks. So this is actually, looking here, this is really beautiful, but like when you see the commercial like track rail, and then you can see the S track and like little plastic clips. And it's this beautiful fabric, it's like this really like high quality linen, and it's beautiful space.
Textural.
And so this year I have vowed to myself I'm going to bring back the pelmet. I'm going to be pelmeting it up in all of my designs when I do any sort of curtain feature, and making like a real kind of like design element out of it, because I'm just so like, it just is really giving me the ick at the moment, and I can't help but see it everywhere I go. So
Isn't it funny
Yeah.
that something like gets in your head and then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I've seen it
Yeah.
all times today, like too much.
100%.
That's
yeah.
funny.
So that is what I'm going to bring into 2025 is concealed curtain tracks.
But as you say, like, make a pelmet a design element.
Oh, it will look so hot.
That is the perfect way to describe making a pelmet cool.
Oh, I've got so many ideas. I've already got a little sketchbook.
They
full
can
of
be,
them.
I'd love to see, because, I mean, commercially and residentially,
Yeah.
that would work really well. But everyone kind of like, you hear the word pelmet, and some people think of like, oh, my grandma's upholstered,
Yeah.
20 centimeter high pelmet in floral
Yeah.
fabric. And I'm like, no, it can be actually quite beautiful.
Yeah. But also that could be cool in a really kitsch way.
Well,
In a commercial
especially in-
environment.
Yes.
So yeah,
Or
pelmet.
cool
watch out
restaurant,
for-
like antique
Definitely.
kind of energy.
Yeah, but pelmet could be made out of anything.
Velvet.
Yeah. Or even just like a
Velvet.
beautiful recycled timber,
Yeah.
beam or something.
Totally.
Yeah.
Or even just a small one with a nice LED strip, giving it ambience,
Yeah. A little bit of like nickel
highlighting.
or
highlighting the texture of the curtain. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, you've got to like know how to do it
100%.
and
But
be
yeah,
confident.
that's it. I've got it sorted.
So good. I love that. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
coming
having
on.
me, Ella.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Behind the Design. We've created this podcast to bring people together, inspire new ideas, and foster a deeper understanding of what goes on behind the design. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with someone who might find it valuable. Until next time, keep creating and stay inspired.